NASCAR had a meeting with some media members today, and they discussed some light topics like Rookie of the Year eligibility, Dash for Cash format. They talked about the new provisional open car slot and who could potentially qualify it. And most light of all the topics, of course, they talked about the NASCAR playoff format. Yes, NASCAR directly addressed the NASCAR playoff format. We have been holding our breath for months, some of us at least. And, well, we got the answer we were expecting. No playoff changes in 2025. Same format, same qualification, same everything. NASCAR's John Probst says it will not make changes to the playoff format for 2025. But, big but here, NASCAR will have a working group in 2025 to take a look at the playoff format for 2026. They don't want to make small changes every year, so this group will take a holistic view of the format. And then John Probst also talked about some of the feedback, I guess, that they have received at NASCAR. The fan feedback is either that they love the playoffs and the storylines, they hate it and they want it to go away, or they like it but they want changes, but don't quite know what changes. And then it says that the stakeholders will also talk about it. That's the scariest part. Anyways, yes, the NASCAR playoffs have been controversial since their birth, since their invented days, since they started. That sounds better. The NASCAR playoffs, since they started, if we want to go back to the elimination format back to 2014, some people not even a fan of the previous format, the chase format, the 10-race chase, starting back in 2004. So we've had some sort of a NASCAR postseason for 20-plus years now, and the most controversial format is the one we are currently in. For those who don't know, 2014, NASCAR introduces the system. 16 drivers make the playoffs every single year. If you win a race during the regular season, you are in, regardless of where you are in points. Well, that's okay. We don't need to overcomplicate every single rule and go year by year. But basically, the format is this. If you win a race in the regular season, you are into the playoffs, no matter if you're first in points, 8th in points, 17th, or 48th in points. If you win a race, you are in the playoffs if you're a full-time driver. That's the big kind of asterisk next to it. You have to be a full-time driver, or you have to have a waiver if you miss a race, like for an injury or something. So then what happens if we only have 12 winners? Well, next 4 guys on points make it. And in the past couple of years, we have seen the instance where with the next-gen car that's kind of really evened out the playing field in a sense, we see a lot of winners each year. I think we've had 15-plus winners in every single year of the next gen. We saw Martin Truex Jr. in 2022, who's running 3rd in the regular season standings, missed the playoffs. I can't remember if it was 3rd or 4th. 3rd or 4th, top 5. We'll go top 5. Play it conservative. He was top 5 in the regular season points, and he missed the playoffs because he did not win a race. 2023. Well, this one was more due to injury, and without the playoffs, they wouldn't have had a shot. But we saw big names Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman miss the playoffs. Hendrick Motorsports drivers. And then this year, 2024, or technically, it's now last year. We are in race week for 2025. In 2024, it got even more kind of freaky from every different angle. We had guys who have been consistent all year, right on the edge of the top 10 in points. Ross Chastain, Bubba Wallace, and Chris Buescher all missed the playoffs because they didn't win a race. And then we saw a big name, Kyle Busch. Well, Kyle Busch, that's a different story. But he was a big name that missed the playoffs. But those were some significant names, some significant drivers in the 2024 season to not make the playoffs. And then the playoffs hit. And the champion ended up being Joey Logano. Joey Logano did a great job advancing through each round, won a bunch of races in the playoffs when it mattered, won the championship at Phoenix. But entering the playoffs was 15th, I think, in the regular season standings, had won 1 race, and it was through a 5 overtime finish at Nashville. That was fuel mileage. And there was a lot of pitchforks out after that championship. Yes, I was one of the pitchfork risers, if we're keeping track of who did and who didn't. But yes, there was a lot more fuel to the fire of the playoff format at the end of 2024 than there had been in the previous 10 years of its existence. Now, we saw back in that first year, 2014, Jeff Gordon, who led the points the majority of the year. Brad Keselowski won the most races that year. They did not even make the Final Four. 2015, Kyle Busch missed a third of the season and won the championship. 2016, we saw guys like, I think it was Carl Edwards and Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick. They were three of the best drivers that year, but Jimmy Johnson ends up winning it. 2017, Martin Truex Jr., well-deserved. 2018, we saw the big three of Truex, Harvick, Kyle Busch obliterate the field, and here comes Joey Logano to sneak in and win that championship. 2019, once again, I'd say that was a deserved championship for Kyle Busch there. 2020, we see Kevin Harvick win 9 races, or 10 races, a lot of races, lead the points the majority of the year. He doesn't even make the Final Four, and he misses the playoff, or he doesn't win the championship. 2021, Larson, well-deserved. 2022, we see Elliott win the most races, lead the points for the majority of the year, doesn't win the championship. 2023, we see Byron win the most races, top 3 in the points the majority of the year, doesn't win the championship. 2024, we see Kyle Larson win the most races. He didn't win the regular season championship, but he led the points for a good chunk of it. And then we saw Christopher Bell make a strong charge in the last 10 races to kind of make that championship battle close if it was a season-long format. Neither of them won the championship. And the regular season champion, Tyler Reddick. That is a breakdown of the elimination-style format of the playoffs. Well, I feel like I got sidetracked there. But anyways, point being, this format is polarizing in the NASCAR world. You got those who love it. They love to see the underdogs or the unexpected winner advance through the playoffs or get into the playoffs like a Harrison Burton. Some people love to see a big name, to see a top seed, a guy who's been great all year, get eliminated early or not make the Final Four like a Harvick in 2020, like a Larson last year. And some people just enjoy chaos. They just want to see the world burn. They want to see the 9 seed win it. They want to see the top 4 seeds completely miss the Final Four. They want to see all the chaos. So it's very polarizing. And then on the flip side, there's traditionalists who hate it. They want it dead. They want it burned. They want a full season format, or they want death, something like that. Like, let's just get extreme here. But this format has caused controversy. It has caused torn opinions in the NASCAR world. And as a result, NASCAR finally reached not necessarily a breaking point because they didn't end up breaking, but because of last year, they bent a little bit, and to the point that they said they were going to review the format over the 2024 into the 2025 off season. And here we are on January 27th, 2025. NASCAR has made their decision. They reviewed it. They decided, hey, we're not going to make changes. So with changes not being made, there's a lot of impacts on this. I really should have started off the video with doing the impacts before we got into the history, but anyways, I got distracted. There's major impacts on 2025, but also the 2026 and beyond. 2025, let's talk about that first. That's coming up. We're 6 days away from the season. I know the clash does not have to do with playoff eligibility, but the fact of the matter is the 2025 season is here. And this is how it impacts the season this year. It's the same thing we've been doing for 10 years. Everyone knows what the goal is. If you win a race in the regular season, you're in. If you don't, there's a chance you miss the playoffs. It doesn't matter if you're Kyle Larson. It doesn't matter if you're Cody Ware. It does not matter who you are. If you don't win a race, you are vulnerable to missing the playoffs. On the flip side, that really writes the script for the majority of the field, I'd say. There are guys, as I said, like Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney. We're going to see those guys win multiple races in the regular season. And there's some I didn't list that will win races in the regular season or multiple races in the regular season. And to those guys, it's business as usual. This news does not affect them. If anything, it'll be I'm going to do this again. I did this last year. It will be a shock if some of those names miss the playoffs. But as I said, there is that everyone else category. Not your Larsons, your Blaneys, your Bells. But I'm talking about your mid-pack teams, your back-of-the-pack teams, your Rick Ware Racing, Cody Ware. He's going to need to win a race to make the playoffs. Let's be realistic there. But there's also those kind of fringe playoff contenders, those guys who they may not be top 16 in points, but they're going to contend for wins at points of this season, and they now know what the goal is. There's some guys that are going to be on the front half of that. That list, I think, would include Austin Cindric, Daniel Suarez, maybe even a Kyle Busch, Austin Dillon, depending on how RCR does this year. Well, where they'll be running 15th and 20th in the points, but depending on how winners go, they may need to win a race. But if there's not a lot of shock winners, they could point their way in. But then you have that next group. And this group, to me, is like your road ringer, Shane Van Gisbergen, AJ Allmendinger, your super speedway experts, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Those guys now know what the plan is. Those guys know exactly what 2025 is. It's no longer about points racing. Now, at the beginning of the season, technically it will be about points racing. But once we get about a fourth into the year, 9 races in, a majority of the field where they will know where they are at. We saw this with Michael McDowell last year. Michael McDowell in 2023, he would have either, if it wasn't for the Indy win, he would have pointed his way into the playoffs, or he would have been like really, really close. He was right on that edge. 2024, he was nowhere close to pointing his way in because he had so many DNFs. They had a really slow start to the year, and they got to the point come Talladega in the spring, it was win or bust. Checkers or wreckers, and McDowell put that into effect. He put that into effect on every super speedway where, hey, if we can't win, 7th place doesn't help us. We're not pointing our way in. We got to find a way to win. Now, ultimately, they didn't, but they quite literally died trying, crashing cars, trying to get into the playoffs. And that's what that group I'm talking about is. SVG, a lot of these ovals, it's going to be his first time in a Cup Series car on these ovals. It's going to take some time for him to get used to it, to get up to speed on it. But on the road courses, immediately he will be a threat to win. It doesn't matter. He can finish last on every single oval. If he wins COTA in a month, doesn't matter. He's in the playoffs. He can literally finish last every single race. But if he wins COTA in a month, playoffs, he's in. Same story for Allmendinger. Allmendinger, he can go out and he can go win at Sonoma. If he wrecks everywhere else, he's in the playoffs. It doesn't matter. Stenhouse can win the Daytona 500. No stress. The rest of the regular season, he is in the playoffs. But if all 3 of those guys don't win a race, realistically, they won't be in the playoffs now. Now, those are just a few examples, obviously. Those are the 3 biggest names and the situations I provided that I could think of. But in terms of 2025, as I said, everyone knows what the goal is. Everyone knows what the objective is. Every team, individually, cars or organizations, they know where they're at now. They know what the goal is. The playoffs are set. We know what the format is. There's no changes. Everyone knows the goal is to win, or there's the potential of missing the playoffs. Now, as for 2026, if there are changes made, which honestly I am kind of skeptical because NASCAR loves this format. They love the TV. They love the elimination format. They want to be like the NFL. We're not the NFL. Will changes be made? Ultimately, I don't think so. Maybe some tweaks, but I got my doubts. As I said, I don't think NASCAR wants to back out of this, but I will say good on them for saying that they're going to spend 2025 to, take a look at it, say, okay, we see the flaws, we see what the fans are talking about, we're going to do this, this, and this, whatever that may be. Obviously, I personally, as a NASCAR playoff disliker, I wish there were immediate changes, but NASCAR probably needs to get feedback from TV. They probably need to get feedback from teams, from sponsors, from whoever it may be. And it can't be an immediate, hey, the fans don't like this, we're going to get rid of winning you're in. Just like that. It's done. Eliminations, they're done. Like, they can't just snap their fingers overnight. We got to remember, this is a major corporation with major corporate sponsors, with big name TV broadcasters that they signed on to the NASCAR deal knowing about the playoffs, buying into the playoffs in a sense. So if NASCAR's going to make changes, they need some time to figure out what the changes are. They need to inform the people they need to inform on the changes before they ultimately make it. Now, as for 2026, what changes could be made? I just listed some of them. Win and you're in. I think that's a big one that's going to be looked at. If we are going to continue an elimination format, 16 playoff driver field, I think win and you're in will be heavily under a microscope. Do we once again want to see, in this era where we have seen so many upset winners, do we want to see a small team? And don't get me wrong, it's great to see small teams win races. It's a huge deal for them. But the past 10 years, there's always been that cloud. They're in the playoffs now. They're holding up a playoff spot over somebody else that should have been there. And that cloud always comes. There's always negativity over it. Like the feel-good story last year with Harrison Burton. Everyone was so happy to see Harrison Burton win his first career Cup race. The son of Jeff Burton. He's had a rough Cup career up to this point. He wins a race. He gets the Wood Brothers, a historic NASCAR team, their 100th win. Everyone was so happy. And then after about 10 minutes, 30 minutes, they were like, oh, this is so cool. Oh, they're going to be in the playoffs. Kind of forgot about that. And that was a big talking point after that. Whereas we should have been, and a good chunk of people were still focused on Burton winning, on the Wood Brothers getting their 100th, but there was still that cloud of people saying, oh, they're in the playoffs now? Ooh. So it became a whole thing. And that's just not the only example. We could go back over the past 10 years of this format, point out individual moments of that, where someone gets in the playoffs and respectfully, everyone knows they're going to get bounced in the first round. So getting rid of winning you're in would eliminate that possibility. It would truly put the top 16 drivers in points after 26 races in. And then the next question would be, do you do winning you're in for the advancements, or do you just keep on doing the top, 12 in points, then the top 8, then the top 4? And then the next question, are we really going to stick with a one race championship format? If we're keeping this elimination system, I think we got to expand it. One race to determine a champion is ridiculous. There's too much that can happen. It's dumb. It makes no sense. If NASCAR is hell-bent on keeping this elimination format, they've got to expand it to 3 or 4 races. If we're going to do this whole elimination thing, if we're going to decide our champion on just a small chunk of races, one race does not do it. We've seen it. And look, once again, I'm not trying to tear them down. Team Penske has done a fantastic job in this playoff era, especially in the next gen era. They have, first of all, they have really good drivers. Obviously, they're a top team. They need that. They have that. But those top drivers, that top team, they know how to, one, advance in the playoffs, and two, the way it's set up right now, you get to Phoenix, you're a Penske car, you're favored because Penske has been dominant at that track in November. Now, even if we went to Homestead, if we went to Vegas, if we went to Charlotte, if we went to even Watkins Glen, wherever we go, that script's going to flip, but it's going to flip to another team. Now, there's tracks like if we go to Iowa, if we go to Gateway, that Penske's still going to be, top dogs at. But we're also, if we change to Homestead, that's going to heavily favor a Kyle Larson, a Tyler Reddick. If they make the Final Four, those guys are going to win a lot of championships if they get there because they're better at that track. Hendrick's really good at that track. Toyota, 2311, really good at that track. So it doesn't matter what track we go to, but as long as we have a one-race championship, it's always going to unintentionally favor one team because at the majority of tracks, there's 1 or 2 teams who are better than everyone else at that style or that exact track. But if we expand it to 3 or 4 races and we put, let's say we put Phoenix, Homestead, Martinsville, and Michigan as the last 4 races of the year, well, now we have 4 different types of tracks. We got 2 intermediates, we got a hybrid of a short and an intermediate, and we got a short track. And the 2 intermediates, they're quite different. So now we've kind of built where we can expand, where we can, better advance a champion, I guess. But there's a lot for NASCAR to look at with this playoff format. If changes are going to be made, first of all, if they're going to keep the elimination format, which I truly think they will. I don't think they're going to get rid of it. But then the second question is, when in you're in, do they keep that? Third question would be the championship itself. Do they keep a single race championship or do they expand it? Do they do 3 races, 4 races? Do they just go back to the 10 race chase, revert in a sense. So there's a lot of questions with the playoff format. It is such a controversial topic in the NASCAR world. But as for 2025, once again, the immediate impact of this is everyone knows what the story is this year. Everyone has their goals now. Win a race, you're in. No stress. It's a single race championship. Get to Phoenix, you know where you stand. As for 2026 and beyond, I don't know. I don't think they're going to get rid of the elimination format. I don't know what they're going to do. They could, for all I know, they could make 0 changes. They could just sit there and say, oh, we said we were going to try, and then they do nothing. So, I don't know. We're talking about the playoffs in February. That makes me unhappy. I don't like talking about the playoffs ever, but here we are. So thanks for watching this video. This was a long one, I know. I want to apologize, but I don't know. There were parts where I rambled, but thanks for watching this video again. I hope you enjoyed it. NASCAR is back this week, so that's a plus. We got the Clash at Bowman Gray. Should be exciting. Should be fun this weekend. Hope you can watch it. We'll do our normal race recap and then our first post-race, so the Monday after live stream, 1 week from today.